Okay, let's get right into it. We're going to decode some of the most common Latin phrases that you see popping up everywhere. You know, they can feel a little intimidating at first, but I promise by the end of this, you'll see they're not just fancy words. They're actually incredible tools for thinking and communicating with a ton of precision.
Right? You've seen these. Ad hoc, post hoc, in situ. They're in articles, in meetings, everywhere. But what do they really mean? Getting to the bottom of their Latin roots? Well, it's not just about sounding smart. It's about actually understanding the nuance so you can use them correctly and honestly with a lot more confidence.
So first up, let's head into the world of science and medicine. Now, in these fields, getting things exactly right is, a matter of life and death sometimes. Precision is everything. And Latin provides that exact, unambiguous language they need.
Okay, let's kick things off with a really critical distinction here. First, you've got ad hoc. This literally means for this. It's all about describing something that was created for one specific, temporary purpose. Think of an ad hoc committee that's put together to investigate one single issue, and once it's solved, poof, the committee disappears. But then you have post hoc. This means after this, and you need to watch out for this one, because it's a trap. It describes a super common logical fallacy, the post hoc fallacy, where you wrongly assume that just because B happened after A, that A must have caused B.
And here's exactly how you'd see them used. The first sentence is straightforward, a committee for a purpose. But that second sentence, wow. When you accuse someone of making a post hoc argument, you're not just disagreeing with them. You're pointing out a fundamental flaw in their thinking. It's a really sharp, effective way to say, hold on, you're confusing sequence with cause. Correlation is not causation.
Now, this idea of state and time keeps going with these two terms that look really similar but are worlds apart. We all know status quo. It means the state in which, the current situation, the way things are right now. But then there's its clinical cousin, status post. This is a medical term, and it means the state after. It's used to describe a patient's condition after some kind of major medical event has happened.
And here's a perfect example from a hospital. When a doctor says the patient is status post-appendectomy, they're packing a huge amount of information into just 3 little words. It immediately tells every nurse, every other doctor, the whole story. This person has had their appendix taken out, and everything we're seeing now is in the context of their recovery from that surgery. It's incredibly efficient, it's precise, and it's a universal language in medicine.
This one is absolutely fundamental in all of scientific research. It's the difference between doing an experiment in a lab dish versus inside a living creature. That's in vitro versus in vivo. In vitro literally means in glass. Think of test tubes, petri dishes, any experiment done in a controlled artificial lab environment. On the flip side, in vivo means in the living. This is when the experiment is happening inside a whole living organism, whether that's a tiny lab mouse or a human patient in a clinical trial.
And this brings us to a topic where precision is, well, everything. Let's start with post-mortem. That's pure Latin, and it just means after death. It describes the general situation or period. But now look at the next two. Their roots are actually Greek, which is interesting. An autopsy comes from autos, meaning self, and opsis, meaning view. So it literally means to see for oneself. It's a specific examination of a body after death. Then you have biopsy. Here we swap out autos for bios, the Greek word for life. So a biopsy is a view of the living. It's an examination of tissue taken from a living person. The distinction is absolutely crucial.
Okay, now let's talk about location versus condition. 2 simple terms, 2 very different but vital pieces of information. In situ literally means in its original place. In medicine, if a tumor is described as being in situ, that is great news. It means it's confined, it hasn't spread. It's all about telling you where it is. On the other hand, intact, which comes from the Latin for untouched, tells you how something is. If a report says a ligament is intact, it means it's whole, it's not torn, it's undamaged. So one tells you location, the other tells you condition.
All right, let's switch gears. We're moving from the lab and the clinic over to the writer's desk. These little Latin abbreviations are like secret weapons, total shortcuts to making your writing clearer, whether you're writing a big academic paper or just a quick email.
This is probably the biggest point of confusion for so many people. So let's clear this up once and for all. First, we have e.g. It stands for exempli gratia, and that translates to for the sake of example. You use e.g. when you want to give a few examples from a much bigger list of possibilities. But then you have i.e. That stands for I thest, which means that is. You use i.e. when you want to clarify what you just said, to nail it down precisely. Think of it as saying, in other words, or what I mean is.
Let's look at these two sentences. In the first one, you should eat more leafy greens, e.g. spinach and kale. Spinach and kale are just two examples. The list of leafy greens is huge, right? There's also chard, arugula, romaine. E.g. tells you we're just giving a sample. Now look at the second one. He's a polyglot, i.e. he speaks several languages. Here, speaks several languages isn't an example of being a polyglot, it is the definition of a polyglot. I.e. is used to provide the exact meaning.
Okay, here's one you'll see a lot in academic footnotes or more formal writing. CF. It's an abbreviation for the Latin word confer. And if you break that word down, con means together and fere means to bring. So confer is literally a command, bring together. When an author writes CF, they're telling you, the reader, hey, take the idea you just read and now go look at this other source and bring them together in your mind, compare them. It's a direct prompt for critical thinking.
And of course, we can't forget these two absolute workhorses. First is ex, which is short for exemplum, the Latin word for example. You'll often see this used for a single specific item, like in a math textbook. Solve for x in x4. And then there's the one we all know and love, etc., which is short for etc. It simply means and the rest. It's the perfect little tool for when you've listed a few things and you want to signal to the reader, you get the idea. The list goes on.
All right, for our last section, let's explore the Latin phrases that have jumped right out of ancient texts and landed smack in the middle of our legal system and even our everyday conversations.
These four are like power tools for communication. You've got per se, meaning by itself, which we use to isolate an idea. It's not the delay per se, it's the lack of communication. Then sine qua non. It means without which not, and it describes something that is absolutely essential. Trust is the sine qua non of a healthy relationship. Then there's quid pro quo, something for something. It's the classic term for an exchange or a trade. And finally, pro bono, which means for the public good. This is when a professional, often a lawyer, does work for free as a service to the community.
And here you can really see how Latin forms the bedrock of some of our biggest societal concepts. Vox populi is the voice of the people. It's the whole idea of public opinion, the heartbeat of a democracy. Habeas corpus, which literally means you shall have the body, is a fundamental cornerstone of our legal rights. It protects every single one of us from being thrown in jail unlawfully. Bona fide means in good faith, and we use it to talk about something being genuine, sincere, the real deal. And of course, modus operandi, or MO for short, it's the mode of operating, a term we've all heard in detective shows to describe a criminal's signature pattern of behavior.
Now this is such a powerful and important contrast to understand. De facto means from the fact. It describes the reality of a situation, how things actually are in practice, whether it's official or not. You could have a de facto leader of a company who doesn't have the official title but everyone knows is in charge. On the other side, you have de jure, which means from the law. This is how things are supposed to be according to the rules, what's written down in the law books.
And this single sentence shows you just how massive the gap between law and reality can be. De jure, on paper, by law, slavery was abolished. But de facto, in fact, in lived experience, deep inequality remained for a very long time. Using these two terms allows you to make an incredibly powerful and concise point about the difference between what a law says and what people actually experience. You hear this one a lot in conversations about books or movies. Deus ex machina literally translates to God from the machine. It comes from ancient Greek plays where if the characters got into an impossible mess, the playwright would just use a crane, a machine, to lower an actor playing a god onto the stage, and that god would just magically fix everything. So today, we use it to describe any kind of lazy plot twist where a sudden, unbelievable solution comes out of nowhere to solve a hopeless problem. It feels cheap, it feels contrived.
Okay, we all know RIP. We see it on tombstones, we use it all the time. It's short for the Latin prayer, requiescat in pace, May he or she rest in peace. But let's not just gloss over that. To really get it, we've got to zoom in on that very first word, requiescat.
So what does it actually mean? Well, the answer is hiding in its root. And that root connects directly to another very familiar word you've probably heard before.
And here it is. The root word is requies. It's the Latin noun for rest. The word requiescat is the verb form of that. It's a specific kind of verb that expresses a wish or a prayer. May one have rest.
And this is where it all clicks together. That exact same root, requies, gives us the word requiem. A requiem is a mass held for the dead, and it gets its name from the very first line of the traditional mass, which begins, Requiem aeternam dona eis Domine. Grant them eternal rest, O Lord. So that simple wish for rest, R.I.P., on a tombstone, shares its very heart, its Latin root, with the grandest, most solemn musical mass for the dead. It's all connected.
And so, as we start to wrap this up, here's one final little directive for all of us. It's NB. This stands for nota bene. It literally means note well. It's an instruction, a little flag that you plant in your writing to tell your reader, hey, wake up, pay close attention, because what I'm about to say is really, really important.
Which brings us to the most important point of all. Latin isn't some dusty, dead language. It's not. It's a living code that's all around us. And once you start to understand it, you unlock a much more precise, a much more powerful way of seeing and describing the world. Learning these phrases, it's not just about memorizing vocabulary. It's about learning how to think with more clarity. And that is something worth noting well.